Uh, Before I start with the presentation, I would actually like to thank Dr. Cato, Dr. Sven, and Catherine for all the guidance and support they have provided throughout the study. Okay, moving on. Unintentional overdose has been one of the major causes of morbidity and mortality in the United States. What is an overdose? An overdose can happen when our body is poisoned either with an illicit drug or even prescription medicine or even over-the-counter medications to the point where our lung and heart stop functioning. Uh, Even though most of the overdose cases are attributed to illicit drugs or even misuse of prescription medication, there is an important factor to note that the regular use of multiple medication through a course of time can actually prove fatal in causing an unintentional overdose event. So today I'm going to explore the medication patterns and polypharmacy associated with unintentional drug overdoses in the US. Uh, for quite a long time, most of the unintentional drug overdoses or the overdoses in general had been attributed to a certain set of medications or common medications like benzodiazepines or opioid analgesics or even stimulants. And we were actually totally unaware, sort of in a position where we are not looking at medications that are used otherwise but can actually contribute to overdose events. Uh, how machine learning fits here is that when the case of we are looking at say 100 unique medications, the total number of possible combinations that the patient can use during this time can be close to trillions if you look at two-way, three-way, or five-way combinations. And another issue is that if we are just focusing on a subset of medication, we would actually be missing out on possible medication combination that can actually attribute to an overdose. For our study, we actually used the IQVIA longitudinal prescription diagnosis and dispensing claims data set for people who actually had an unintentional overdose in 2019. We actually made sure that these are the people who did not have an overdose event at least 2 years prior. And for our case, we actually looked at the medication that these patients were using 14 days prior to the incident and also 1 year prior to the incident, which would actually be our control period. We actually are looking at only people who are aged 12 and above and who had an overdose event. Then we used FP growth mining algorithm to look at the most common medications, and then used XGBoost to identify whether there were any medication patterns which can be attributed to these unintentional overdoses. The preliminary results of the study came out pretty interesting. One such was that with regard to polypharmacy, polypharmacy increases prior to an overdose. If we are actually looking at the overall patient data set and also for patient who actually had an drug use disorder, you can see that the total number of patients using more than 3 drugs are greater than 60% in all 3 cases. We also did a sub-analysis on patients who were having a drug use disorder but did not use any medications in the control period, that is 1 year prior to the overdose event. And certain interesting combinations came up. One such couple of them are actually gabapentin and trazodone, gabapentin and quetiapine, and even respiratory and heart medications like albuterol, linsopril, metoprolol, which are not federally regulated and are not contributed as having attributed to overdoses. Then we also looked at XGBoost. We actually used the feature importance scores to look at medications which can actually be used for comparing whether a patient can have an overdose or even if they are taking the medication. And these are actually some of the medications that came up. One thing to note here is that if a patient had been using a medications in the control period and they discontinued it in the case period, these medication could still come up here because then those medication can be attributed as not causing an overdose. So we did the analysis for drug use disorder and people without drug use disorders. One important thing that I would like to present here is that machine learning has been really helpful in this case, where it was very difficult for us to track the total count of unique medication that can come out, especially using FP growth. So for the next step, we are actually planning to improve on the accuracy of the model. Currently, it's at 70%. We are planning to improve on it. And then we are also planning to improve on the the data set that we are currently using, we are planning to include patients who did not have an overdose event on the control period, so as to expand the data set as such. Yeah, thank you.